Rain slapped the ambulance bay doors hard enough to make them shudder. Pittsburgh outside was a smear of bridge lights and wet asphalt. Inside, the air was bright and sharp with bleach. The doors crashed open. A stretcher flew in, pushed by 2 paramedics and boxed in by soldiers with no unit patches. Their boots hit the tile in a heavy, practiced rhythm. One of them kept a hand near his belt as if the hospital could turn hostile. Their radios whispered in short bursts, too low to catch, but the tone was pure command. "Trauma 1, the lead paramedic shouted. "Male 40s, 3 gunshots to the chest. Pressure's gone twice. He's slipping." Nurse Danny Lopez met them at the line of tape on the floor, already gloved. "On my count," she said, and the team slid the patient onto the trauma bed in one clean motion. The man's uniform had been cut open. Gauze was packed into his chest, soaked through nearly black under the lights. Sand still clung to the seams at his collar, gritty against the white sheet. An oxygen mask hissed. Each breath sounded wet like air forcing its way through water. The monitor flashed numbers, then dipped. Blood pressure low, heart racing. Danny lifted the edge of the mask to check his airway. She froze. "Tell me I'm not seeing that," she murmured. A plastic ID card had slipped from the man's collar onto the sheet. Danny picked it up, held it to the overhead light, and read it once. Then again. Admiral Jack Rourke. A soldier stepped forward, square shoulders, blank face. "No phones," he said. "No pictures, no visitors. You treat him and you keep him alive." Danny didn't look away. "This is a hospital." "That's why we brought him," the soldier replied. The man on the bed shifted. His eyelids fluttered. For a second, his gaze cleared, sharp and angry, and locked on the nearest medic. His hand came up heavy with blood and gripped a sleeve. "Get me," he rasped through the mask. "Your best surgeon." A calm voice cut through the noise. "You've got her." Dr. Claire Hart stepped into Trauma 1 as if she had been there all along. Hair tucked under a cap, sleeves rolled, eyes sweeping the patient in one pass. Her gaze touched the ID card for less than a blink. Something tightened at the corner of her mouth, then vanished. She didn't waste words on introductions. She looked at the dressings, the blood, the soldiers at the door. "Report," she said. 3 shots close range," the paramedic answered. "We got him back once in the rig. He's fading again." Claire's fingers pressed along the sternum, reading tension through skin. She listened to the breath under the mask, heard the thin whistle that made her jaw tighten. 2 large bore IVs, she asked. "Both running," Danny said. "Fluids wide open." "Type and cross," Claire said. 4 units ready. Ultrasound to the bed. Crash cart. A nurse sprinted for supplies wheels, squealing, and the defibrillator's plastic smelled scorched under the light. A resident hovered behind her shoulder. "Dr. Hart, do we call Dr. Kessler?" "Call him," Claire said. "Then move." She peeled back the dressing. Fresh blood pooled fast. She packed gauze with firm, efficient pressure. "Back up," she told the soldier. He hesitated, then took 1 step back. Rourke's eyes found Claire. Even half-conscious, he looked like a man used to being obeyed. His hand lifted again, not for comfort, for control. His voice was a scrape. "You." Claire adjusted the mask and kept her tone flat. "Save your air, Admiral." The monitor's alarm changed pitch, then became a long, flat tone. The resident went pale. "We're flat." "Start compressions," Danny snapped. "Now." Hands hit Rourke's chest. The bed shook with each push. "Epi ready," Danny said, syringe in hand. Claire watched the compressions, the rhythm, the wasted motion. "Hold," Claire said. Danny blinked. "Claire, he's gone." "Hold for 3 seconds," Claire repeated. Compressions stopped. The room turned hollow, like someone had pulled the sound out by the roots. Claire reached into her scrub pocket and pulled out a small vial with no hospital label. Clear liquid, plain glass, no barcode. The resident stared. "That's not from pharmacy." Claire drew up a precise amount without looking at him. "Line." Danny's jaw tightened. Then she held out the IV port. Claire injected smooth and controlled. "Resume," she said. Hands returned to the chest. "Charging?" the resident said, voice thin. "Clear," Danny ordered. The shock cracked through the air. Rourke's body jolted, then settled. For a beat, nothing. Then the monitor clicked. Beep. Another. The line on the screen rose, dipped, rose again, uneven but alive. Danny stared at the monitor like it had broken a rule. The resident's hands hovered, unsure if he was allowed to stop. Claire leaned in, listening to the breath, Sound's eyes steady on Rourke's face. "Ventilate slow," she said. "Don't fight his lungs." They moved as a unit, rolling the bed toward the elevators. The soldiers fell in beside it, tense and silent. Under the bright hallway lights, blood shone on Claire's gloves like varnish. She didn't wipe it off. If you believe some battles are fought under fluorescent lights with nothing but steady hands, leave a comment and tell me you're still here. Like the video and subscribe. Tiếp tục với phần 2 của câu chuyện bằng tiếng Anh, đảm bảo độ dài phù hợp với số từ đã tính toán trước đó. Giữ cho đoạn văn liền mạch từ phần 1 và tạo sự chuyển tiếp mượt mà hướng đến phần 3. Nội dung can đảm bảo tính liên kết hấp dẫn và đóng góp vào sự phát triển tổng thể của mạch truyền. Lưu ý đến việc phát triển nhân vật, nhịp độ câu chuyện và chiều sâu cảm xúc khi tiếp tục phát triển cốt truyện. Tuyệt đối không sử dụng dầu gạch ngang, không nhá hàng. Báo trước part 3, tránh các câu như what comes next, it would, sai. Không tổng kết đạo đức hay tuyên bố bài học. Không liệt kê kế hoạch tương lai. Không meta commentary. Không emoji, không hashtag, trừ khi nằm trong caption gốc được trích dẫn. Đã suy nghĩ trong Matrix. Part 2. The wheels squealed again as they hit the elevator threshold. The doors tried to close on the crowd, then gave up and opened wider. Claire stepped in beside the head of the bed, one hand braced on the rail, the other steadying the oxygen line so it would not snag. The soldiers packed in behind her shoulders, squared eyes, scanning corners that did not exist. The elevator smelled like wet wool and disinfectant. Someone had spilled coffee near the buttons. The dark stain spread in the shape of a river delta. Danny stood at the foot of the bed, watching the monitor with a stare that was almost angry. Beep, beep. A little uneven, a little thin, but there. The door shut. For a second, the brushed metal inside the elevator caught Claire's reflection. Fluorescent glare flattened her face, turned her eyes into two dark coins. She did not look away fast. She simply blinked once as if the reflection had done something out of rhythm. The elevator rose. The building hummed around them, old steel and new wiring. The soldiers said nothing, but their radios crackled short whispers under the steady elevator rattle. When the doors opened on the intensive care floor, the air changed. Quieter, cooler, a soft chemical scent from the cleaning carts. The halls looked the same as every hospital hall until you noticed how the lights never quite stopped flickering, as if the power was always negotiating with itself. They rolled the bed past glass windows and closed doors. Curtains twitched. Staff faces appeared and vanished. The rumor traveled faster than the wheels. Inside. ICU bay. 7 machines waited like patient animals. A ventilator stood ready. Lines and ports, a cart of sterile supplies, everything clean, everything hungry. Claire guided the transfer with a steady hand. On 3, she said. They moved him onto the ICU bed. The sheets swallowed the blood stains, the fabric turning dark in quiet blooms. Danny adjusted the ventilator tubing fingers, fast mouth tight. A respiratory therapist leaned in. Settings. Start low, Claire said. He is fighting air, not numbers. One of the soldiers stepped closer. No names, no chart access outside your team. Danny lifted her chin. That is not how charts work. The soldier did not blink, then make it work. Claire did not argue. She looked at the man's hands, the way he kept them open, ready to grab. Even unconscious, he held his body like a weapon. Give us the room, Claire said. The soldier hesitated. Claire met his eyes, calm, unmoved, the kind of calm that did not ask permission. "You want him alive," she said. "Then let us do our job." The soldier backed out slow and pulled the door nearly shut. A sliver of hallway light cut through the gap like a blade. Danny exhaled for the first time since Trauma 1. "What was that vial?" she asked low. Claire checked the chest dressings, pressed along the bandage edge, listened to the lung sounds again. The stethoscope tubing was cold against her fingers. "It worked," Claire said. "That is not an answer?" Claire looked up. Her gloves were still sticky at the fingertips. She peeled one off, then the other, turning them inside out with a practiced twist. The snap of latex sounded too loud in the quiet room. Danny watched her. "You just brought back an admiral with something that was not stocked in this hospital." Claire reached for fresh gloves and slid them on slower this time. "Focus on the fluid," she said. "Balance him. Keep his pressure stable." Danny let it sit, but her eyes stayed sharp. "You knew who he was." Claire did not look toward the ID card, now tucked under the chart clip. "Everyone knows his face." "That is not what I mean," Danny said. "You looked at him like you already had a file on him in your head." Claire adjusted the IV drip and leaned in close enough to see the fine tremor in Ruark's eyelids. The kind of tremor that came with pain even under sedation. "We all carry files," Claire said. "Some are just louder." Footsteps in the hall, quick-clipped familiar. The door swung open and Dr. Miles Kessler stepped inside. He was tall, neat, and perfectly awake for a man dragged out of bed by a midnight call. His hair was combed, his tie slightly loose, as if he had made a point of looking human. His eyes flicked to the monitor, then to Claire's hands, then to the blood on the sheets. He took it in without changing his face. That was the first thing that felt wrong. "Dr. Hart," he said, voice soft, "my office now." Danny started to protest, then stopped when she saw Kessler's expression. Not anger, not fear, something more careful. Claire did not hesitate. She pressed 2 fingers to the side of Rourke's neck, checked the pulse herself, then nodded to Danny. "Stay with him," Claire said. "If he dips, call me on the direct line." Danny gave a stiff nod. "Do not disappear." Claire's mouth tightened in something that was not quite a smile. "I am standing right here." Kessler walked fast, not rushing, but moving with purpose. The hall lights reflected in the polished floor. Claire's shoes made no noise. Behind the glass of a supply cabinet, her face flashed by in fragments. His office door shut with a solid click. The room smelled of paper coffee and the faint cologne of a man who needed to look stable. A framed diploma hung on the wall. Another framed award. The blinds were half closed. City lights cut through in thin stripes. Kessler did not sit. He leaned back against the edge of his desk, arms loosely crossed, posture casual. His eyes were not casual. "You overrode protocol," he said. "You administered an unknown agent. You spoke to armed personnel as if you outranked them. Then you ordered my staff without explaining anything." Claire took off her cap and set it on the chair. Her hair clung to her temples from sweat. "I saved him," she said. Kessler's gaze held steady. "That is not in dispute. The question is how?" Claire stared at the blinds. The lines of light on the wall looked like bars. "Training," she said. "Whose training?" Kessler asked. "Because it was not ours." Claire looked back at him. "Do you want to fire me for keeping a man alive, or do you want to ask why he came here bleeding in the first place?" Kessler's jaw shifted as if he had bitten down on a word he did not want to taste. His phone on the desk lit up. The ring was muted, a soft vibration against wood, but the caller name on the screen was clear. A government line. No hospital extension, no personal number. Kessler glanced at it once, then looked at Claire. "They are calling already," he said. "Of course they are," Claire replied. Kessler answered without saying hello. His tone changed not in volume but in shape. It became smooth-clipped, obedient in a way that did not fit him. Claire caught only pieces. Confirmed. "Yes, he is stabilized. No press has not been informed by us. Yes, we have the attending physician with him." Kessler's eyes flicked to Claire when he said that last part. A small warning, a small possession. He listened again, then said, "Understood," and ended the call. For a moment, the office was quiet, except for the air vent and the distant beep of a monitor in the hall. Kessler set the phone down carefully. "They want a full report," he said. "They also want to know why you recognized him before his identity was officially confirmed." Claire's eyes narrowed. "Is that what you told them?" "I told them what they asked," Kessler said. "Now I am asking you. Have you met Admiral Rourke before tonight?" Claire held his gaze. Her face was still, but her throat moved once as she swallowed. "No," she said. Kessler studied her, as if he were reading a scan. "Then you should be comfortable answering basic questions." Claire stepped closer to the desk. The stripes of light from the blinds slid across her cheek, making her look older for a second. "You do not want basic answers," she said. "You want something you can file." Kessler's voice stayed calm. "I want to keep this hospital from turning into a classified crime scene." Claire's eyes flashed. "It already is." Kessler's lips pressed together. He did not argue. He did not deny it. That was the second thing that felt wrong. Claire took her cap back from the chair. "I am going back to my patient." Kessler pushed off the desk. "Be careful," he said, and the words sounded like concern, but they landed like an order. Claire walked out without responding. The ICU felt quieter now, the kind of quiet that hid movement behind curtains. 2 extra security guards stood at the hallway junction, not hospital staff, not police. Their posture was military, their faces were blank. Danny waited for Claire near the observation window, arms crossed, eyes restless. "He is still stable," Danny said, "but he is waking through sedation." Claire moved to the glass. Rourke lay still, but his eyelids twitched, then opened in a thin slit. His gaze drifted unfocused, then found the window. For a heartbeat, he stared straight at Claire as if the glass did not exist. The monitor jumped. Beep, 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 faster, sharper. Danny reached for the controls. His heart rate is spiking. Claire pushed through the door. The room was dimmer inside, lit by the glow of screens. Rourke's breathing rasped against the mask. His eyes were open now, clear enough to cut. He lifted one hand slow and pointed at her, the gesture steady despite the tremor in his fingers. "You are not supposed to be here," he said. Claire stepped to his bedside and adjusted the IV line, giving her hands something to do. "In this room," she said, "you do not get to decide who is here." His eyes tracked her face. "Not the room," he whispered. "You." Claire paused. The ventilator hiss filled the space between words. Rourke's voice roughened, as if speaking scraped something raw inside him. "They told me," he said, "you died at Raven Gorge." Claire's fingers stayed on the IV clamp. She did not squeeze, she did not flinch, but her breathing slowed, measured, like she was counting beats she could not afford to miss. "They tell a lot of stories," she said. Rourke's gaze did not leave her. "I saw the body bag," he said. "I signed the report." Claire leaned closer, close enough that he could see her eyes clearly, close enough that Danny stopped breathing for a second. "Then you signed what they put in front of you," Claire said, voice low. "Try to rest, Admiral." Rourke's lips parted. His next words came out like a confession he did not want to make. "You are Dr. Claire Hart," he said, "but that is not the name I remember." Tiếp tục phần tiếp theo với logic viết tương tự trước đó. Phần 3. Đã suy nghĩ trong 20 giờ. Part 3. Claire kept her eyes on the IV clamp, not on his face. "You are medicated," she said. "Names get slippery." Rourke's gaze stayed sharp anyway. He looked past the mask, past the tubing, like he could see the shape of a lie by the way it sat in her mouth. "I remember your hands," he said. "I remember the way you count. You did it there too." Danny shifted at the foot of the bed, pretending she was focused on the ventilator settings. Her fingers hovered near the sedation pump. Claire reached for the monitor leads and straightened them, a useless task, but it bought her a breath. "You were in shock," Claire said. "You are in pain. Your brain is filling in blanks." Rourke's mouth pulled into something that might have been a smile if it did not hurt. "My brain does not do blanks," he whispered. "Not after Raven Gorge." The name hit the room like a cold draft. Claire felt her pulse in her throat. She did not move. She did not give him the satisfaction of a flinch. Danny cleared her throat. Admiral, you need to stay calm. Rourke did not look at Danny. His eyes stayed locked on Claire. That is not the name I remember, he said, again softer now. Not the one on your file. Not the one they buried. Claire leaned closer, so close he could see the faint sheen of sweat at her hairline under the fluorescent glow. Listen to me, she said. Her voice was steady, but there was a thin edge under it like metal under cloth. You are not in a debrief. You are in intensive care. If you keep pushing your heart rate, you will bleed again. His jaw worked once. He swallowed. The monitor beeped faster, then slowed when Claire adjusted the sedation by a fraction. Rourke blinked, fighting it. Do not let them take me, he said. Danny's head snapped up. Who? Rourke's eyelids fluttered. The sedation pulled at him like undertow. He forced the words out anyway. The ones without names, he murmured. The ones who smile like they already won. Claire watched his pupils the way they tracked. She had seen that look in soldiers who woke up in the wrong room. Rest, she said again. I need you breathing. That is the only order in here. Rourke's hand moved under the sheet, searching for the bed rail. His fingers found it and clenched. You were there, he whispered. You pulled a man out of a burning vehicle. You slapped him awake and told him to keep talking. You said if he went quiet, you would leave him behind. Claire's throat tightened. For a second, she smelled sand and burnt fuel instead of antiseptic. She heard a radio screaming through static, her own voice calm and flat like it belonged to someone else. She forced her focus back to the present. The monitor beeped in a steady rhythm, stubborn as a metronome. You are confused, she said. Rourke's eyes narrowed. Say it, he rasped. Say you were not there. Claire held his gaze. She did not blink. I was not there, she said. The words came out clean, too clean. Rourke stared as if he could see a crack forming beneath them. Then his eyelids slid lower. The sedative finally did what it was built to do. His grip on the rail loosened. Danny exhaled and adjusted the ventilator again, hands a little shakier than before. That was close. Claire checked the dressings once more, then the drainage line. She pressed 2 fingers to his wrist, feeling the faint thrum of life under the skin. Danny lowered her voice. He knew something. Claire did not answer. She cleaned a small smear of blood off the bed rail with a wipe that smelled like alcohol and citrus. The scent made her stomach turn. A soft knock came at the door. Officer Marcus Hale stepped in without waiting for permission. He did not look like hospital security. His shoulders sat too square, his eyes too awake. There was a scar at his hairline that disappeared into his short cut. He nodded to Danny, then to Claire. Doctor, Officer Claire said. Marcus kept his voice quiet. You got visitors on the floor. Not families, not staff. Danny frowned. We have extra guards. Marcus shook his head once. Not those. 2 men came up from service level, tool cart, maintenance badges that look fresh off a printer. They did not make eye contact with anyone. They did not scan into the panel for the electrical room. Claire's eyes went to the hallway through the glass. The corridor lights flickered once, then steadied. Where are they now? She asked. Lost them near the supply alcove by the east stair, Marcus said. I asked the unit clerk if she recognized them. She said no. Then she started getting calls from a blocked number 3 times in 2 minutes. Danny's face tightened. This is insane. Marcus kept his gaze on Claire. I have cameras, but half the feeds went dark for 7 minutes. Someone did a clean cut. No error report. Claire felt a faint prickling on her arms, the way hair rose when the air charged before a storm. Show me, she said. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. Security station is around the corner, but we got people watching the elevators now. Claire glanced down at Rourke. His chest rose and fell under the ventilator rhythm. The beep stayed steady. Danny, Claire said, do not leave him. If anyone tries to touch his lines, you call Marcus and you hit the code button. Loud. Danny swallowed. Claire. Claire looked at her. Promise me? Danny held her gaze, then nodded once. I promise. In the hallway, the air felt colder. The lights buzzed overhead, and somewhere deeper in the building, a generator gave a low, distant groan that did not belong on a normal night. They passed a nurse station crowded with unfamiliar uniforms. No insignia, no names, just men with blank faces standing too close to the wall as if they were trying to become part of it. One of them glanced at Claire. The look was quick, clinical. Like a man checking inventory, Claire kept walking. At the security station, Marcus tapped a code and opened the door. Inside, monitors lined the wall, each showing a different angle of the hospital. Most feeds were steady. A few were frozen on frames that looked like bad still photos. Marcus pointed. There. East stair. That camera should show the supply alcove. It is dead. He clicked through logs, no alarms, no tamper warning. Someone knows your system, Claire said. Marcus gave a humorless smile. Someone knows how to make it look like nothing happened. Claire leaned closer to a monitor that showed the ICU hallway. Her own face flashed in the glass for a moment, layered over the feed. For a second, she could not tell which was the reflection and which was the recording. She straightened, forced her focus to the screen. Rewind, she said. Marcus pulled the timestamp back. The hallway appeared empty, then the feed stuttered, then jumped ahead. 7 minutes erased clean as a cut. Like it never existed, Marcus murmured. Claire's jaw tightened. It existed. A phone rang on Marcus's desk. He checked the caller ID and stiffened. This is not my line. Claire watched his hand hover over the receiver. Answer it, she said. Marcus picked up, hail. Silence crackled on the other end, then a voice low and smooth. You are out of your lane, officer. Marcus's eyes flicked to Claire. His knuckles went white around the phone. Identify yourself. A pause. You do not need my name, the voice said. You need to follow instructions. Claire leaned in and spoke into the receiver, tone calm. Tell your people to stop walking my hospital like they own it. The line went quiet, then the voice returned, still smooth, still faintly amused. Dr. Hart, it said, we appreciate your cooperation. Claire did not react. You called the wrong place. You are in the right place, the voice replied. The call ended. Marcus lowered the phone slowly. They know your name. They have a lot of names, Claire said. A sharp burst of chatter came from a radio outside. One of the unfamiliar guards spoke too fast to catch, then another replied with a single word. Hold. The hallway lights flickered again. This time they dimmed for a fraction longer before stabilizing. The air carried a thin scent, sharp and metallic, like the first bite of a storm. Ozone. Claire stepped out of the security station and looked down the corridor toward ICU. The floor reflected the lights in long white streaks. At the far end near the supply alcove Marcus had mentioned, 2 figures moved past a doorway, heads down, pushing a cart. They moved like men who knew the exact number of steps to their target. Claire did not raise her voice. She did not run. She walked controlled, as if she belonged there more than anyone else. Marcus matched her pace. You want me to pull them? Claire's eyes stayed on the cart. Not yet. The monitor beep from the ICU carried faintly through the hall, steady and stubborn, threading through the building's hum. Claire reached the corner and stopped just short of turning into view. The lights overhead blinked once more, and the generator groan deepened as if something below had woken up and shifted its weight. Tiếp tục phần tiếp theo với logic Việt, tương tự trước đó, phần 4, đã suy nghĩ trong 20 pieces. Part 4. Claire waited at the corner until the cart's wheels squeaked close enough to hear the wobble in one caster. The corridor lights pulsed again just once, and the air carried that thin metallic bite. Marcus shifted his weight like a man about to step into traffic. The 2 figures pushed the cart with their heads down. Gray coveralls, fresh plastic badges clipped high on the chest, hard hats tucked under one arm, too clean for anyone who had crawled through ceiling tiles. Their boots were the same kind Claire had seen in airport terminals on men who pretended they were on vacation. Claire stepped out into the hall. Can I help you? She asked, voice calm, not loud. Both men stopped at the same time. The one on the left lifted his eyes first. Quick scan, exit, camera dome, Claire's hands. Marcus's stance. Then a polite smile appeared as if it had been rehearsed. "Power's acting up," he said. "We got a call about the ICU wing." Marcus angled closer, blocking the line of sight, down to Bay 7. "From who?" The man's smile held. "Facilities." Claire looked at the badge. The photo was a generic face that matched the man's features, but the laminate edges were too sharp. No scuffs, no corners rounded from use. The name printed in bold letters read Evans. Claire did not react to the name. She watched his hands instead. No stains, no cracked knuckles, nails trimmed short, too even. "You signed in?" Claire asked. "Front desk told us to come straight up," the man called Evans said. Marcus's eyes flicked to the cart. A canvas cover lay over its straps, tight. Something heavy shifted under the cloth when the other man adjusted his grip. Claire took one step closer to the cart and let her gaze drop to the tools. A coil of cable, a voltage tester, a wrench, the kind of props you buy to look legitimate. The lights dimmed for a fraction longer than before. The hallway went soft at the edges. For a heartbeat, the floor reflection turned the men into smeared shapes. A low groan rolled through the building, deeper than the air system, closer to the bones of the place. Marcus touched the radio at his shoulder. "Control, I have 2 maintenance on the ICU floor. Confirm work order." Static answered, then nothing. Evan's smile twitched just at the corner. He looked down and nodded once small, like he was giving permission. The other man's hand slipped under the canvas cover. Claire saw the motion before she registered what it meant. Her body moved on training that did not belong to a hospital. "Down," she said. The man yanked out a compact rifle, black and clean, barrel short. A suppressor sat on the end like a muffler. He raised it not at Marcus, not at Claire, but past them toward the glass doors of ICU Bay 7. The first shots sounded wrong in a hospital, not the thundercrack people expect. More like a stapler in a quiet room, a series of hard, flat pops. Glass spidered, then exploded. Shards sprayed into the corridor like ice. The alarm tone from inside the ICU changed pitch, desperate and sharp, and the monitor beep became frantic. Marcus lunged forward, grabbing the barrel and shoving it down. The rifle kicked, popping holes into the floor tile. White dust leapt up. The second man, Evans, pulled a pistol from the waistband, smooth as a magician. Claire pivoted toward the ICU door. A nurse inside screamed. Another voice shouted, "Shots fired," and the sound ricocheted down the hall, swallowed by the fluorescent buzz. Claire hit the door with her shoulder. It swung inward on the first try because the lock had never been meant to stop anyone with intent. Inside Bay 7 was chaos under dimmed lights. The glass observation window had shattered outward. Tiny cubes of safety glass covered the floor, sparkling like crushed candy. One of the unfamiliar guards stood in the doorway to the hall, eyes wide, rifle halfway raised. A second later, he jerked and folded, dropping out of frame. Danny was at the foot of the bed, frozen for half a second, then moving again. Her hands were on the ventilator tubing, keeping it from ripping free as the bed jolted. Rourke's eyes were open. Not clear, not awake, just open enough to show panic. His heart rate screamed across the monitor in jagged spikes. Claire grabbed the bed rail and pulled. "Get him!" Lucy told Danny. Danny did not ask why. She released the brake and helped Claire drag the bed down behind the equipment column. The column was thick and metal bolted to the floor, and for once the hospital's love of heavy machinery meant something. A burst of shots chewed through the doorway. Plaster dust puffed into the room. A chunk of wall dropped, exposing wires that sparked briefly blue and sharp. The smell of ozone hit harder now. Danny crouched, hair loose from her cap, eyes wide but focused. His line is kinked. "Fix it," Claire said. Danny shoved the IV line through her fingers until the flow steadied. Rourke's chest rose under the ventilator rhythm, a mechanical hiss that sounded too calm for the violence around them. Claire peeked around the edge of the column. In the hall, Marcus grappled with the rifleman. The two moved in tight, grunting boots, skidding on glass. Marcus slammed the man into the wall hard enough to shake a framed safety poster loose. The poster fell and cracked on the floor, smiling cartoon hand still pointing toward the words, "Wash your hands." Evan stepped into the doorway, pistol-up eyes on the bed. He did not look at the nurses. He did not look at Marcus. His focus was narrow and clean. Claire reached for the crash cart beside the column, her fingers closed around the defibrillator paddle, heavy, awkward. Not a weapon, a tool. But it had weight, and weight mattered. Evans fired once into the room. The shot punched into the monitor stand, sparks bursting from the screen. The monitor went black, then flickered back, the heart line skittering wild for a second before stabilizing. Danny flinched, but stayed down, one hand still on the tubing, like she could hold Rourke's breath in place. Claire rose just enough to throw the paddle. It struck Evans's forearm. His pistol jerked. The shot that followed went wide, shattering more glass and sending a spray of fragments across the far wall. Claire moved in fast low and slammed her shoulder into him. Evans staggered back into the hall. The pistol skidded across the floor and vanished under a cart. Marcus saw the opening. He released the rifleman and swung hard a short hook that connected with the man's jaw. The rifleman's head snapped sideways. He hit the floor and did not get up. For one breath, everything held. Then the other man, Evans, recovered. He glanced down the hall, eyes calculating distance, and turned to run. Marcus grabbed for him and missed by inches, fingers catching only fabric. Evans tore away boots, crunching glass, and disappeared around the corner toward the east stairwell. Marcus started after him, then stopped, eyes flicking back to Claire and the ICU door. The choice was immediate. He returned to the doorway, chest heaving, and looked inside. "You okay?" Claire's breathing was controlled. Her hands were steady again, even with blood on her sleeves from someone else's wound. "Check the hall," she said. "Make sure no one else is coming." Marcus nodded and dragged the rifleman's body away from the doorway, clearing the path. His face tightened when he saw the man's eyes. Open, empty, no fear, no surprise. Danny crawled closer to Rourke, checking his pulse under the sheet. "He is alive. He is alive." Claire leaned in and pressed 2 fingers to Rourke's neck. The pulse hammered too fast, but it was there. His eyes found her for a moment. He mouthed, silent under the mask. Claire adjusted the sedation. "Stay down," she said. "Not as an order, as a promise." In the hall, voices rose. "Boots!" Someone shouted for lockdown. A code was called overhead, the speaker crackling as if the building itself was choking. Claire stepped out of the bay, scanning left and right. The corridor was littered with glass and a dark smear where the guard had fallen. One of the soldiers from downstairs appeared at the far end, rifle up, shouting into a radio that still only gave him static. Marcus crouched beside the rifleman's body. He searched the pockets with quick, efficient hands. "No wallet," he muttered. "No phone." Claire knelt by the man's shoulder. The coverall sleeve had a seam that looked too thick. She pinched it and felt something stitched beneath. She pulled the fabric back. A patch sat on the inner lining, hidden from casual view. Black cloth, a white symbol, a triangle made of fractured lines like a mirror breaking into 3 clean pieces. Claire's stomach tightened. The smell of ozone suddenly felt like a taste in her mouth. Marcus leaned closer. "You recognize it." Claire did not answer right away. Her eyes stayed on the symbol as if it could move. Behind them, a familiar voice cut through the noise, calm and contained. "What happened here?" Dr. Miles Kessler stepped into the corridor. His shirt sleeves were rolled. His tie was gone. His hair looked as neat as before. He took in the shattered glass, the fallen guard, the dead attacker, and the blood on the floor with a single sweep. He did not look shocked. He looked like a man arriving at a scheduled meeting. Claire stood. She kept the patch in her hand, curled in her palm. "Someone tried to kill my patient," she said. Kessler's eyes flicked to her fist, then to the ICU door, then back to her face. His expression did not change, only his voice lowered, just enough to keep it private. Is Admiral Rourke alive? Yes, Claire said. Kessler nodded once as if checking a box. He turned to the hallway guards and spoke with sharp clarity. Seal this wing. No one enters without my approval. Get facilities to restore power stabilization. Call federal security. Marcus looked at Claire, then back at Kessler. His brows drew together. The orders came too quickly, too cleanly. Claire opened her hand and showed Kessler the patch. For the first time, something flickered across his face. Not fear, not surprise. Recognition that he hid almost instantly. Claire held his gaze and let the silence do the talking. Tiếp tục phần tiếp theo với logic viết tương tự trước đó phần 5. Đã suy nghĩ trong 17 sơ. Part 5. Claire held Kessler's gaze and let the silence do the talking. Around them, the corridor tried to return to normal and failed. A nurse knelt to pick glass from the floor with trembling hands. Someone down the hall shouted for more gauze. A security radio kept spitting clipped fragments that never completed a thought. The smell of burned plastic and ozone clung to the air vents. Kessler's eyes stayed on the patch in Claire's palm, then lifted back to her face. His voice remained even, almost kind. Where did you get that? Claire did not look down. From the man who came through my ICU door with a rifle.
Kessler glanced toward the fallen attacker. A medic had pulled a sheet over the body, but the outline still looked wrong. Too still, too light for what he had carried.
Kessler held out his hand. Give it to me. Claire hesitated for half a beat, then placed the patch on his palm. Kessler closed his fingers around it. Not like evidence, like something he did not want anyone else to see. Marcus noticed. His stare sharpened. Who are they? Marcus asked. Kessler's gaze flicked to Marcus, then away, as if Marcus were a detail that could be handled later. Not your concern. Marcus stepped forward. Someone tried to execute a patient in our ICU. That is my concern. Kessler's tone softened, but the softness carried a blade. Your concern is keeping people alive on this floor. Let me handle the rest. Claire watched the exchange and felt the weight of it settle in her chest. Kessler was not reacting like a surgeon who had just seen his unit attacked. He was organizing, sorting, already placing pieces where they belonged. He looked less like a man shocked by violence and more like a man correcting a schedule. A guard in a blank uniform approached, rifle low eyes scanning the hall. Doctor, we have orders to lock down this level. Kessler did not ask whose orders. He simply nodded. Do it. Danny appeared in the ICU doorway, face pale hair half loose. Claire. He is stable, but he is fighting the sedation. Claire took one step toward the door, then stopped when Kessler spoke again. You should stay visible, he said. No one needs to see you running around right now. Claire turned back slowly. Is that advice or an instruction? Kessler's expression did not change. It is the difference between keeping this contained and turning the hospital into a circus. Claire's eyes narrowed. It already is. Kessler's mouth tightened. Then do not make it worse. Marcus looked between them, reading the undercurrent. He did not like what he saw. A distant clatter echoed from the stairwell. More boots, more bodies moving fast. Then the overhead speaker crackled, the hospital voice strained. Attention. Security lockdown in effect. Please remain in your current location. The announcement ended and the hush that followed felt heavier than the noise. Claire stepped into Bay 7. The room had been hit hard. Glass crunched under her shoes. The observation window looked like a broken mouth, jagged teeth of frame exposed. The monitor stand had a bullet scar. The screen glowed with a faint tremor. The heart line steadied again, stubborn and thin. Rourke lay sedated, eyes closed, now mask hissing softly. A bruise bloomed on his shoulder where the bed had slammed into equipment during the drag. His chest dressing was tight, fresh gauze layered over old. Danny hovered at his side like a guard dog, one hand on the ventilator tube, the other on the sedation pump. Who were they? Danny whispered. Claire checked the lines, then the pressure bag, then the chest dressing. Her hands stayed steady. Her stomach did not. People who do not want him talking, Claire said. Danny swallowed. To who? Claire looked at Rourke's face. Even asleep, his jaw looked set like he was bracing for impact. To anyone, Claire said. Danny's eyes darted to the broken glass. That patch! I saw it. The symbol! You know it. Claire met Danny's gaze. Danny was asking for reassurance, for a simple explanation that could fit into a nurse shift and end at sunrise. Claire could not give her that. Keep him stable, she said. No visitors. No questions from anyone in a blank uniform. If they push you, call me. Danny's voice tightened. Claire, they have guns. Claire leaned closer and lowered her voice. Then do not give them a reason to use them. Danny nodded, but her hands shook as she adjusted the sedation by a fraction. Claire stepped back into the corridor. The floor looked different now. Not because it had changed, but because Claire was seeing it with a different set of instincts. Corners were threats. Doors were cover. The hospital smelled less like medicine and more like a staging area. Marcus waited by the nurse station, jaw clenched. Those uniforms, he said quietly. They are not ours. I asked for IDs. They told me to stop asking. Claire's eyes flicked down the hall where the blank guards stood. No name tags. No insignia. No hospital badges. The kind of anonymity you only saw in places that did not want records. Keep your people close, Claire said. Do not let anyone isolate you. Marcus's brows drew together. You talk like you've been here before. Claire did not answer. A commotion rose near the elevators. A cluster of men stepped onto the ICU floor, moving with tight spacing and quiet confidence. They wore military gear without unit markings, helmets carried under arms, weapons slung like routine tools. One of them held a clipboard in a sealed plastic sleeve. The lead man approached the nurse station and spoke with a voice that expected compliance. Federal transfer, he said. We are taking custody of Admiral Jack Rourke. Danny stiffened behind the glass of Bay 7. Claire felt her pulse kick hard and fast, then settle into a cold line. Kessler appeared at the edge of the group as if he had been waiting for them. He spoke to the lead man in low tones. Claire moved in. You're not taking him anywhere. The lead man looked at her. His eyes were flat. Doctor, we have orders. Claire held out her hand. Show me. He handed her the packet. Official letterhead. Stamps. A signature line. It looked clean enough to convince anyone who needed paper more than truth. Claire read the text once, then again. Her name was not on the authorization. Kessler's was. She looked at Kessler. Kessler did not meet her eyes. They are moving him to a secure facility, he said. Claire's voice stayed calm. He is not stable for transport. The lead man's mouth twitched. He is stable enough. Danny pushed out of Bay 7, eyes wide. He is on a ventilator. The lead man did not glance at her. We will manage. Claire stepped closer to Kessler. You signed off on this? Kessler finally met her gaze. His eyes were careful, warning her without words. You do not get to fight this, he said softly. Not here. Claire's voice lowered. Why are you helping them? Kessler's expression tightened, like a man holding pressure on a wound that would not stop bleeding. Because this hospital cannot survive a war inside its walls. Claire stared at him. It is already inside. Kessler looked past her toward the glass doors of Bay 7. Then keep him alive long enough for them to take him alive. That is the best outcome. The phrase landed wrong. Too clinical. Too rehearsed. Best outcome for who? Claire handed the packet back to the lead man without letting go right away. If you touch him and his pressure crashes, you will kill him. The lead man's gaze did not change. We do not plan on killing him. Claire released the packet. She turned to Danny. Stay with him. Do not let them disconnect anything without me in the room. The lead man stepped forward. We need access now. Claire moved toward Bay 7. Two of the blank guards shifted into her path. Not aggressive, just present. A wall. Doctor, one of them said, voice polite. Please stand aside. Claire looked at the guard's hands. He was right-handed. The rifle strap sat tight. His trigger finger rested straight along the frame, trained and disciplined. He was not here to negotiate. I am the attending surgeon, Claire said. That patient is under my care. The guard's face did not change. Not anymore. Claire stared at him, the words dug in. What does that mean, she asked. The guard did not answer. He simply held position. Claire looked to Kessler. Kessler's jaw flexed. Claire, he said low, do not do this. Claire felt heat rise under her skin, then drain away, leaving her cold. Her brain tried to run through options the way it ran through procedures. None of them were good. Danny's voice cut through tight with fear. Claire, please. Claire took a breath and stepped back just enough to shift the angle. The lead man nodded to his team. Move. They flowed toward Bay 7. Fast, efficient. 2 went in first. 1 stayed at the door. Another covered the hall. Claire tried to step forward again. The guard stopped her with a hand to her shoulder, not rough, not gentle. A restraint that said, you can fight, but it will not matter. Claire looked down at the hand, then up at the guard's eyes. Take your hand off me, she said. The guard did not. Claire's gaze slid past him to the room. She saw Danny pressed against the wall, forced out of the way. She saw the ventilator tubing being handled by hands that did not belong there. She saw the bed brakes release. Then the door swung partly shut, blocking her view. The hallway filled with the sound of wheels rolling away. Claire moved before she decided to. She shoved the guard's arm off and sprinted down the hall, shoes slipping on a scatter of glass. Marcus shouted her name, but she did not stop. She rounded the corner toward the elevators. The elevator doors were open. The team pushed the bed inside with practiced speed. The lead man glanced up once and met Claire's eyes across the distance. No anger, no threat, just a silent acknowledgement that this was happening. Claire reached the elevator as the doors began to close. She jammed her hand into the gap. The doors pressed against her fingers. Hard. Pain shot up her hand. The lead man stepped forward and looked down at her hand like it was an inconvenience. He did not touch her. He did not need to. Doctor, he said, voice calm. Do not lose your hand over this. Claire kept her hand there anyway. Her knuckles went white. Open the door, she said. The lead man leaned closer. You are not cleared. Claire's eyes burned. He is my patient. The lead man's gaze stayed flat. Not anymore. The doors pushed again. Claire pulled her hand back at the last second, skin-scraped fingers stinging. The doors slid shut. The elevator descended. Claire stood there, breathing hard, staring at her reflection in the closed metal. For a second, the fluorescent light made her face look like someone else's. Marcus reached her and grabbed her elbow. Claire, stop! You are going to get yourself shot! Claire jerked free. She spun and ran back toward Bay 7. The door was open now. The room felt emptier than it should, as if someone had stolen the oxygen. The bed was gone. The ventilator stood idle tubing, coiled like a dead snake. The monitor still glowed, but it was unplugged, the heart line frozen on a last jagged trace. On the edge of the floor, a dark streak cut through the glittering glass. Blood. Not a pool, not a spray, a dragged line. Claire followed it out of the room into the hall, eyes scanning the floor, the walls, the corners. The streak led toward the service corridor where the lights dimmed and the air smelled older like damp concrete. A nurse stood near the junction, pale and shaking hands pressed to her mouth. Claire stopped in front of her. Where did they take him? The nurse's eyes were wet. Her voice came out thin. They said they had orders. What orders? Claire asked. The nurse swallowed. To transfer the body. Claire's jaw clenched. He was not a body. The nurse flinched. Claire forced her voice to steady. Which way? The nurse lifted a trembling finger and pointed toward a set of gray doors marked authorized personnel only. Service elevator, she whispered. They went down. Tiếp tục phần tiếp theo với logic viết tương tự trước đó phần 6. Part 6. The gray doors at the end of the corridor looked ordinary until you stood close enough to see the extra latch and the fresh scuff marks at the bottom as if they had been kicked open more than once. A small sign read, Authorized personnel only. The letters were clean. The wall around it was not. Claire stared at the doors for a second, then looked back at the nurse who had pointed the way. Did they show badges? Claire asked. The nurse nodded too fast. I did not get a good look. Did they give names? Claire pressed. The nurse's lips parted, then closed again. Her eyes dropped to the bloodline on the tile. That was the answer. Claire stepped past her. Marcus caught up from behind, breathing hard, his radio still spitting static like a mouthful of gravel. His gaze went to Claire's scraped hand, then to the doors. Down there is not part of the hospital tour, he said quietly. Claire did not slow. Down there is where they took him? Marcus grabbed her forearm, not tight, just enough to stop her for one beat. Claire, listen to me. You saw those men. They do not care who you are. Claire turned her head. Her eyes were calm, but the calm was thinner, now stretched. They cared enough to block me, she said. That is not nothing. Marcus held her gaze. You have a plan. Claire looked toward the doors again. I have a patient. Marcus exhaled sharp and controlled, like he was swallowing an argument. You should bring backup. Claire's mouth tightened. The people with guns are the people who took him. Who exactly do you want me to call? Marcus did not have an answer that fit inside the hallway. Footsteps echoed at the far end of the corridor. A blank uniform guard turned the corner, moving toward them, posture, stiff eyes, scanning. Marcus shifted subtle. He angled his body as if he were just standing there, casual. His hand dropped near his belt, not to draw, but to be ready. Claire did not wait. She reached the doors and pulled. Locked. She put her palm against the metal and felt a faint vibration. Not from the building's air system, something deeper. A low hum that traveled through steel like a heartbeat. The guard approached, voice polite. Doctor, this corridor is restricted. Claire turned her head slightly. My patient was transferred through these doors. The guard's face stayed blank. You are not cleared. Marcus stepped forward. I am security. I need to see your clearance. The guard looked at Marcus for half a second, then looked past him. He was not here to negotiate with the help. Step away, the guard said. Claire saw the guard's hand shift on his rifle strap, a small movement. Practiced, unemotional. Marcus's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked once to Claire, a silent question. Claire glanced down at the wall panel beside the door. It had a small lock cylinder and a keypad. The keypad was dark. Power issues, she murmured. Marcus heard it. Do not, he warned low. Claire looked up at the guard. If you want me away from this door, she said. Voice, even then open it and show me that my patient is not down there. The guard did not answer. He lifted his chin slightly. Behind him, 2 more blank uniforms appeared at the corner, spreading out without a word. Marcus's shoulders squared. Claire, he said again, a little sharper. Claire did not move. She simply held the guard's gaze as if she were counting the beats between decisions. The hallway lights flickered. For an instant, the guard's face went dim, his features flattening into shadow. The air carried that sharp metallic taste again. Ozone. Then from behind, a voice cut in, slightly breathless. Dr. Hart? Noah Kim, the resident, came jogging up the corridor, white coat, half-buttoned stethoscope, bouncing. His eyes widened when he saw the guards and the doors and the blood on the floor. Security told me you ran, Noah said. They said the patient is being moved. Claire looked at him. You saw the paperwork. Noah swallowed. It was signed by Dr. Kessler. Marcus's eyes narrowed at Noah. Why are you here? Noah's hands lifted a fraction, palms out. Because this is wrong. The lead guard's gaze flicked to Noah, then back to Claire. You need to leave, he said. Noah tried to keep his voice steady. I am a physician on this floor. The guard did not even look at him. Not in this corridor. Noah took a step back, then remembered himself and stepped forward again. Smaller, but still there. Claire watched him. A young doctor with a clean coat and fear in his eyes, trying to stand up to men who did not have names. Go back upstairs, Claire said. Noah blinked. What? Go back, Claire repeated. If they start locking doors, you get Danny out. You get nurses out. You make noise where it is safe to make noise. Noah's throat moved. He wanted to argue. He also wanted to survive. He nodded once quick and backed away. The guard shifted his weight. "Doctor," he said, "this is your last warning." Claire turned her head slightly toward Marcus. Her voice dropped. "Can you pull the fire door alarm at the east stairs?" Marcus stared at her. "That triggers a floor response." "That is the point," Claire said. Marcus exhaled. "You are going to start a panic." Claire's eyes did not leave the guard. They started it. Marcus hesitated for a fraction. Then he turned and walked away at a controlled pace, not running, not tipping his hand. The guard watched Marcus go, then looked back at Claire. "Step away from the door," he said again. Claire did not. 30 seconds later, the fire door alarm screamed from down the hall. A harsh mechanical shriek that made heads snap up at nurse stations and made the blank uniforms glance at each other for the first time. The lead guard cursed under his breath and spoke into his radio. Static answered, then a burst of fast speech that did not sound like hospital codes. The two guards at the corner shifted. One moved toward the noise. Claire took the moment. Her fingers went to the door panel. The lock cylinder sat above a thin seam. She popped the cover with the edge of her badge, not swiping, prying. The plastic gave with a quiet crack. 2 wires sat inside, one red, one black. Her hands did not shake. They moved like they remembered a different kind of night. She touched the wires together. A spark snapped. The keypad blinked once, then flashed green. The latch clicked. Claire pulled the door open and stepped through. The service corridor beyond smelled like damp concrete and old paint. The lighting was weaker yellowed, and the walls were scuffed with decades of carts and boots. A sign on the wall read "Civil Defense Storage" in faded block letters. Marcus appeared at her shoulder, breath tight. He had moved faster than his calm walk had suggested. "You are insane," he whispered. Claire kept moving. "Keep your voice down." They passed stacks of folded gurneys and boxes of dusty supplies. The hum underfoot grew louder. The air felt colder. Water dripped somewhere in the dark, steady as a slow clock. At the end of the corridor, a set of metal elevator doors waited. Not the public elevators. No polished panel, no cheerful signage. Just a scratched call button and a small red light above it. The bloodline continued here, faint but clear, smeared as if the bed wheels had rolled through it and carried it along. Marcus pressed the call button. Nothing. He pressed again. The red light flickered, then steadied. The doors opened with a heavy groan. Inside the elevator was a steel box. No mirror, no carpet. The walls were scratched with old gouges. Numbers were stamped into the panel instead of lit. G1, 2, then levels marked S1, S2, S3. Marcus stepped in first, scanning corners out of habit, even though there were none. Claire stepped in behind him. The doors began to close. Claire reached out and hit S3. Marcus looked at her. "You picked the deepest one." Claire's eyes stayed on the doors. The blood went down. The elevator shuddered and started to descend. The hum beneath the floor rose until it became a constant vibration in the bones. The air inside the elevator cooled fast as if it was dropping into a refrigerator. Claire could smell metal and dust. Beneath that, the faintest trace of something chemical, sharp and clean. Marcus shifted his stance, bracing. "If this goes bad, you do not get a second exit." Claire did not answer. She watched the panel as the stamped numbers passed. The elevator lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. The doors opened onto S1. A corridor stretched ahead, empty concrete walls, exposed pipes overhead. The sound of the hospital disappeared up there, replaced by a distant, mechanical thrum. The doors stayed open for a beat too long, then closed again and continued down. S2. The air grew colder. The lighting changed. Fluorescent tubes buzzed, but the buzz was lower, more industrial. The walls no longer looked like hospital infrastructure. They looked engineered, reinforced, steel plates bolted over concrete. Claire's throat tightened without her permission. The elevator continued. S3. The doors opened with a hard mechanical sound that felt more like a vault releasing than an elevator arriving. Cold air washed over them sharp enough to sting the inside of Claire's nose. The corridor beyond was steel, not painted steel, not decorative, thick matte functional. The floor was a solid dark surface that swallowed sound. Their footsteps sounded different here, softer and heavier at the same time. A row of ceiling lights cast a pale haze down the hall. Each light hummed faintly, and behind that hum was a deeper vibration, steady and alive. Machines. Marcus stepped out slowly. He turned his head left, then right. "There is no way the hospital has this on their blueprints," he said, voice low. Claire stepped past him, eyes scanning. The corridor was lined with doors. Not normal doors. Each door was sealed glass, framed in thick metal. No handles, no windows you could open. Each one had a code etched into a plate at eye level. MF01, MF02, MF03. Claire walked closer. Her breath fogged faintly in front of her mouth, then vanished. Inside the first glass chamber, the lights were dimmer. She could see a silhouette seated head bowed, a person or something that wanted to look like one. In the next chamber, another shape, standing still. Marcus's hand went to his belt, then stopped. He had nothing to draw that would change this. Claire moved down the corridor, reading the plates as she passed. MF07, MF08, MF30. The deeper she walked, the louder the hum became. It was not the elevator anymore. It was coming from all around, like the corridor itself had a pulse. Then she heard it. A beep, faint at first, as if it were coming through layers of steel. Beep, beep. Claire stopped. Marcus stopped behind her. "Is that his monitor?" Claire did not answer. She listened again. The beep was steady but distant, threaded through the mechanical thrum like a thin lifeline. She stepped toward the next chamber. MF12. The glass was clearer here, less scratched. The metal frame was newer bolts, clean edges, sharp. Something moved inside. Claire's breath caught. A hand rose slowly and pressed flat against the glass. Pale, steady. The fingers spread, and the shape of the hand was wrong only in how familiar it felt. Claire stepped closer until her reflection layered over the glass faint and ghosted. Her own face hovered above the hand like a double exposure. For a second, she could not tell where the reflection ended and the figure inside began. The hand on the other side did not tremble. It held there calm as if it had been waiting. Tiếp tục phần tiếp theo với logic viết tương tự trước đó phần 7. Đã suy nghĩ trong 12 sơ. Part 7. The hand stayed on the glass palm, flat fingers spread, as if it was feeling the cold through the barrier. Claire stood so close, her breath fogged the surface in small bursts. The fog vanished quickly, swallowed by the chill in the corridor. Her reflection hovered over the hand, a pale overlay that made her face look borrowed. Inside the chamber, the figure lifted its head. The light caught cheekbones, a brow, the curve of a mouth. Claire's stomach tightened. It was her, not a resemblance, not a stranger with familiar eyes. Her exact face calm and expressionless, staring out from behind sealed glass. Marcus inhaled sharply behind her. "No," he whispered, like saying it could unmake what he was seeing. Claire did not step back. Her pulse thudded once in her throat, then flattened into something colder. She placed her fingers against the glass, just above the other hand, not touching, but aligned. The pain between them felt like a frozen sheet. The figure inside tilted its head, a small, precise motion. It mirrored her without needing to think. Its eyes did not blink. A faint click sounded overhead. A speaker. Then a voice soft and perfectly clear filled the corridor. "Hello, doctor." Claire's shoulders went rigid. The voice was hers. Same cadence, same calm. Same quiet edge that made people stop arguing. Marcus looked up at the ceiling, then back at the chamber, as if trying to locate the trick. "Where is that coming from?" he asked. The figure behind the glass moved its lips. The sound came from the speaker anyway, timed to the mouth synchronized like a dubbing track. "You should not be here," the voice said. Claire swallowed. Who are you? The figure's mouth curved into a faint smile that did not reach the eyes. I am what you left behind, the voice replied. Claire held still. That is not possible. The figure lifted its other hand and pressed it to the glass beside the first two palms planted like it was bracing to push through. Possible is a paperwork problem, the voice said. You solved it once. Marcus shifted closer to Claire, his body angled as if he could shield her from a speaker and a piece of glass. His hand hovered near his belt again, then dropped. He did not like being unarmed in a place that felt built for cages. Claire forced her eyes to take in details instead of the whole. The chamber frame bolts were new. The gasket line around the glass was clean. The plate at eye level read MF12 in crisp etching. The hum in the floor vibrated through her shoes. The distant beep continued steady, faint somewhere deeper. Claire kept her voice low. What do you want? The figure blinked once, slow and deliberate, like it was practicing the act. You, the voice said, standing still. Claire's jaw tightened. You are a recording? The figure's smile widened by a millimeter. A recording does not get lonely, the voice replied. Marcus took one step forward. Open the door, he demanded. Let me see who is behind that glass. The figure's eyes slid to Marcus with a calm that made his anger look small. Officer Hale, the voice said, and Marcus froze. You are very brave for a man with no exit. Marcus's gaze snapped to Claire. How does it know my name? Claire did not answer him. She stared at the figure's mouth, at the stillness, at the lack of tremor, the lack of micro-movement around the eyes. Human faces never held perfectly still, not unless the person behind them had learned to turn fear into stone. Claire lowered her hand from the glass. Her fingertips tingled from cold. How do you know me? She asked. The figure inside lifted its chin. Because I am you, the voice said, the version that does not hesitate. Claire's breath came out in a thin line. Stop! The figure's eyes narrowed slightly, the first real expression, a flicker of something like curiosity. You always said that, the voice replied. Right before you broke rules. Marcus leaned close enough that Claire could hear him without looking away. Claire, he said, quiet, urgent. We need to go. Claire stayed where she was. Where is Admiral Rourke? The figure looked past Claire as if considering the question. Then the voice returned soft again. You still think this is about him, it said. Claire stared at its face. Her face. She felt the urge to look away, to deny the mirror, to turn this into something else. A hallucination from stress. A trick. Anything that fit inside a normal night. Instead, she watched. She listened. Answer me, Claire said. The figure's lips moved with the speaker's words. He is not the one they're testing, it said. Marcus's hands clenched. Who is they? The figure did not look at him this time. Its gaze stayed locked on Claire. They are close, the voice said. You can hear them if you listen. Claire's eyes flicked toward the corridor behind them. She held her breath. At first there was only the hum. Then faintly footsteps. Not in this hall. Somewhere above or beyond filtered through steel. A rhythm of movement. Marcus heard it too. His shoulders lifted a fraction. Claire turned back to the chamber. What is your name? The figure's smile returned faint and controlled. Echo, the voice said. Echo Hart. Claire tasted the name like metal. That is not a name. It is a function, Echo replied. Say something, and I return it. Claire stared at her double's eyes. Then return this, let him go. Echo's gaze did not change. Not yet, the voice said. Claire's fingers curled once, then loosened, her nails pressed into her palm through her glove. She forced her voice to stay steady. You are a person, she said, or you are pretending to be one. Either way, you are trapped in there. Echo's head tilted again, measured. Trapped is a word for people who want out, Echo said. I was built to stay. Marcus grabbed Claire's elbow firmer now. We are leaving, he said. Claire pulled her arm free without looking at him. The corridor lights flickered once. The hum deepened for a breath, like a machine taking in air. The speaker crackled softly, then steadied. Echo's voice returned quieter. "You should not be standing in front of MF12, it said. "This is where they keep the things that remind you." Claire's throat tightened. "Remind me of what?" Echo's eyes lowered, just for a moment, as if it was glancing at something on the other side of the glass. "Your file," the voice said. Marcus stepped back half a pace, scanning the hall. "Claire, listen. We are not alone." Claire turned slowly away from MF12 and looked down the corridor. There were more chambers in both directions, glass and steel, each one a quiet box. Some were dark. Some showed silhouettes that did not move. The air was cold enough that her breath kept appearing in front of her mouth. On the wall between two chambers, a small access door sat flush with the steel. No sign, no handle. Just a seam and a keypad with a faint backlight. Claire stared at the keypad. 4 digits. The kind she had used before in places that did not want names on doors. A sound echoed behind the steel, distant and deep, like a valve releasing pressure. Marcus moved closer to her again. "If we get caught down here, there is no badge that saves us." Claire's eyes stayed on the keypad. "I am not here for a badge." She reached out and touched the keys, not pressing yet, just feeling the cold plastic under her fingertip. Echo's voice came again from the speaker above MF12. "You remember it said almost gentle. You always remember when the door is locked." Claire's pulse kicked once. A memory surfaced not as a picture, but as a sensation. Dust in her mouth, heat on her skin, a metal door in a desert lab, her own hands working a keypad while gunfire thudded against concrete somewhere nearby. She pressed 4 numbers. The keypad blinked green. The seam shifted. A lock released with a soft mechanical click. Marcus stared at her. "How did you know that code?" Claire did not look at him. "I did not," she said. "My hands did." She pulled the access door open. Cold air spilled out, colder than the corridor, carrying a clean chemical smell that stung the back of her nose. Inside was a narrow room lined with metal shelves, server racks, and sealed plastic bins. The lights were dim blue tinted, and the hum was louder here, vibrating the floor. Claire stepped inside. Marcus followed, then stopped at the threshold, listening. "Quick," he whispered. "Do what you came to do." Claire moved along the shelves, scanning labels, medical supplies, trauma kits, sterile packs. Then a folder on a lower shelf, thick and pale, clipped shut with a red tag. The tag read heart. Claire's breath hitched. She crouched and pulled it free. The paper inside was crisp, too crisp for something old. A photo stared back at her from the first page. Her own face, younger hair pulled back, tight, eyes hard. Subject heart Claire. Status terminated. A stamp below it in block letters. On paper. Claire's fingers tightened until the folder creased. Marcus's voice came from the doorway tight. "Claire, we have movement." Claire flipped to the next page. A line of text sat under a series of technical blocks she did not let herself read yet. Neural copy complete. Her vision narrowed for a second as if the room had tilted. She swallowed hard and forced her eyes to keep moving. Another page. A notation about preservation, about retrieval, about a site labeled Raven Gorge. Claire's chest tightened as if someone had wrapped wire around her ribs. She heard Echo's voice again, now closer, not louder, just sharper in the speaker, as if the system had leaned in. "That is the part you never read twice," Echo said. Claire snapped the folder shut and shoved it under her arm. Marcus hissed from the threshold. "Now." Claire rose and moved toward the exit. As she reached the access door, the beep in the distance grew slightly clearer, not louder, but nearer, like a thread being pulled toward her. Beep, beep. Marcus backed into the corridor, first checking left and right. The steel hall looked the same, but the air felt different, charged. Footsteps echoed again, closer now, and this time they sounded like more than one pair. Claire stepped out and pulled the access door shut behind her. The lock clicked into place. Echo's chamber light flickered. Echo's face behind the glass remained calm, watching. The speaker crackled softly. They found you, Echo said. Claire tightened her grip on the folder and turned her head toward the sound of boots approaching through the steel. Tiếp tục phần tiếp theo với logic viết tương tự trước đó phần 8. Đã suy nghĩ trong 14 xứ. Part 8. Bootsteps came through the steel like a drum line, not hurried, controlled, the kind of pace that assumed the hallway belonged to them. Claire shifted the folder under her arm and pulled Marcus close to the wall, both of them slipping into the thin shadow between two chambers. The corridor lights hummed overhead. The cold in the air felt sharper now, as if the building had decided to keep its secrets refrigerated. Echo stood behind the glass of MF12, still as a statue. Its eyes tracked Claire without blinking. They found you, Echo had said. Claire watched the far end of the hall, listening for the point where sound turned into sight. Marcus leaned close, voice barely a breath. We are outnumbered? Claire nodded once. Her mouth was dry, her mind was loud. The boots rounded the corner. 4 men in dark gear moved down the corridor in a tight line, rifles angled low, but ready. No patches, no names. Their faces were half hidden by helmet straps and shadow. They walked past MF12 without looking at it like cages were normal scenery. The lead man stopped at the access door Claire had opened moments earlier. He placed 2 fingers on the keypad, tapped and frowned. It was accessed, he said. His voice carried that clipped certainty that did not invite questions. Another man stepped up with a small device and pressed it against the seam. A soft beep answered. The device flashed green. Marcus stiffened beside Claire. They can read the lock. Claire kept her gaze fixed on the men. Her fingers curled around the folder hard enough to crease it again. The second man glanced toward MF12 and spoke without looking away from the door. Subject is active. Echo's lips moved behind the glass, but it did not speak. It only watched calm. The lead man spoke into his shoulder radio. She is down here. Claire felt a cold drop of certainty settle in her stomach. They were not searching. They were closing. A 5th set of footsteps joined the corridor, slower, softer, almost casual. The men shifted slightly to make space without being told. Dr. Miles Kessler stepped into view. He looked wrong here, not because he did not belong in steel corridors, but because he belonged too easily. His posture was loose, as if he had stepped out of an office, not into a containment wing. A black coat hung open over his shirt. No tie, no badge on a lanyard, only a small, stitched emblem on the left chest, pale against dark fabric. A fractured triangle. Claire's jaw tightened. Marcus saw it too. His eyes narrowed. That is the same symbol. Kessler's gaze moved down the corridor and landed on MF12. He watched Echo for a quiet second, expression unreadable, then turned his eyes toward the access door. It is always the doors, he murmured almost to himself. Then he lifted his head slightly. Dr. Art Kessler said, voice calm. Claire did not move. You should not be here. Kessler's mouth curved faintly. Neither should you. Marcus's hand hovered near his belt again. Nothing there, only instinct. Kessler took 1 step forward, and one of the armed men shifted to keep him centered, protective, deferential. Claire stared at the emblem on his coat. So this is what you are. Kessler's gaze flicked to her scraped hand, then to the folder pressed against her ribs. His eyes sharpened. You took the file, he said. Claire's voice stayed steady. It was mine. Kessler sighed as if she had disappointed him. It was contained. Claire almost laughed, but nothing about this was funny. You mean hidden? Kessler sees. Kessler kept walking slow and controlled closing distance, one careful step at a time. You were safe up there, he said. You had a name, a license, a clean record. You had a life. Claire's lips pressed together. A life you fabricated. Kessler's eyes held hers. A life you accepted. Claire felt the folder under her arm like heat. The words inside it pulsed in her mind. Terminated. On paper. Neural copy complete. Marcus leaned toward Claire. We move, he whispered. Claire did not answer him. She watched Kessler. You let them take him, she said. Kessler's face did not change. I allowed a transfer. They dragged him out bleeding, Claire snapped. Kessler's tone stayed calm, and he is still breathing. Claire stared at him. That is your defense. Kessler's gaze slid briefly to MF12 again. Breathing is the baseline, he said. Everything else is negotiation. Echo's voice came through the ceiling speaker, soft and amused. He likes to pretend he is a doctor. Kessler did not look away from Claire. Quiet, he said. Echo's mouth moved behind the glass, and the speaker answered anyway. She is not going to be quiet. She never was. Kessler's jaw flexed. One of the armed men shifted uneasy as if the voice had touched a nerve.
Claire's eyes stayed on Kessler. What is it, she asked? A copy, a weapon?
Kessler's expression tightened, as if he had expected the question and still resented it. It is a solution, he said. Marcus's breathing quickened. To what problem? Kessler finally glanced at Marcus, the look quick and dismissive. Human error. Claire's stomach turned. She could smell the antiseptic from upstairs in her memory, bright and clean. Down here, the air smelled like metal and electricity, like a storm trapped in a box. Kessler lifted his chin slightly. Hand over the file, he said. Then come with me.
Claire shook her head once. No.
Kessler's eyes did not harden. They stayed almost gentle. That was worse. You do not understand your position, he said. Claire's voice lowered. I understand it fine. You want me contained. Kessler's gaze flicked to the men behind him. I want you alive. Echo's voice cut in again, light as a whisper. He wants you controlled. Claire's eyes narrowed. Shut it down, she said to Kessler. Kessler looked at her as if she had asked him to cut off his own hand. You do not shut down a program like this, he replied. You integrate it. Claire's pulse thudded once. Where is Admiral Rourke? Kessler's mouth opened slightly, then closed. He smiled very small. You are still holding on to him, he said, like he is the point. Claire stepped forward half a pace before Marcus caught her elbow. Answer, Claire said. Kessler watched her, the way a surgeon watches a patient fight anesthesia. He is secured, Kessler said. Claire's eyes burned. Secured where? Kessler's gaze slid to the folder under her arm. In the only place that matters, he said. Where he can do his job. Claire's voice sharpened. What job? Kessler held her gaze. To confirm which one of you walked out of Raven Gorge. The corridor went quiet in Claire's head, as if someone had turned down the world and left only that sentence. Marcus stared at Kessler. What are you talking about? Kessler did not answer Marcus. He watched Claire's face with clinical attention. Echo's voice came softer now, almost gentle. Insurance, it said. A witness with a badge. Claire felt her grip tighten on the folder. He knows me, she said. He recognized me. Kessler nodded once. Exactly. Marcus shook his head, a hard denial. This is insane. Kessler's tone did not rise. No, he said. It is procedure. Claire's stomach clenched. She imagined Rourke strapped to a chair somewhere below steel and lights used as a measuring tool. She imagined someone asking him to point to choose to decide which face was real. Claire's voice dropped. You are using him. Kessler's eyes stayed steady. We are using what we have. Claire's hands moved before she finished thinking. She reached into her scrub pocket and pulled out her hospital badge. Kessler's eyes flicked to it. Do not. Claire snapped the badge in half. The plastic cracked loud in the cold corridor. The sound echoed off steel. The men behind Kessler shifted rifles, lifting slightly. Claire threw the broken badge to the floor. I am done cooperating, she said. Kessler stared at the pieces on the ground. For a second, something like real frustration crossed his face. Then it was gone. He lifted his hand, palm down, a small gesture. Two men stepped forward. Marcus moved fast, stepping in front of Claire. Back off, he said. One of the men raised his rifle a fraction. Not aiming yet, just reminding. Claire grabbed Marcus's sleeve and yanked him backward into motion. Move, she said. They turned and ran. Boots thundered behind them instantly, the quiet line snapping into pursuit. Marcus's shoes slapped the dark floor. Claire's breath came quick, cold in her throat. The hum in the corridor seemed to deepen as they ran, as if the building itself was responding. They passed chamber after chamber, MF11, MF10. Shapes inside boxes that did not move. Claire did not look. She kept her eyes forward, hunting for an exit that did not exist. A shot cracked behind them, loud and sharp, in the steel hull. A bullet hit the wall ahead, throwing sparks. The smell of burned metal filled Claire's nose. Marcus cursed. "They are firing." Claire veered left into a side passage she had not noticed before, a narrower corridor with fewer lights. A sign on the wall was stamped into metal, not printed. Authorized only. Marcus stumbled, caught himself, and kept going. They reached a heavy door with a lever latch. Claire slammed her shoulder into it. Locked. Marcus grabbed the lever and pulled with brute force. The metal did not move. Claire glanced down. A keypad. 4 digits again. Her fingers hovered. Behind them, footsteps closed in heavier, faster now. Claire pressed numbers without thinking. The keypad blinked red. Claire's breath caught. Echo's voice came through a speaker somewhere above, quiet and close, like it was standing at her shoulder. "You are nervous," Echo said. "That makes you slower." Claire gritted her teeth and tried again, forcing her mind to clear. The folder under her arm dug into her ribs. This time the keypad blinked green. The latch released. Claire yanked the door open and shoved Marcus through. They spilled into a wider room, filled with metal shelves and stacked equipment crates. The lighting was dim bluish. A low wall of server cabinets sat along one side, lights pulsing in steady patterns. The air was colder here, with a clean chemical bite that stung the back of Claire's nose. Marcus slammed the door behind them and threw the lever. A heavy bolt slid into place. They stood in the dark, breathing hard. For a beat, there was only the hum of machines and the distant beep that kept threading through everything. Beep, beep. Marcus leaned against a shelf, eyes wide. "Tell me you have an explanation." Claire held the folder tighter and looked around the room, scanning labels, listening for movement on the other side of the door. "I have proof," she said quietly. Marcus stared at her. Proof of what? Claire swallowed. Her voice came out lower than she intended. "Proof that I was never supposed to walk out alive." A fist hit the door from the outside, testing it. Once, then again harder. The bolt held. Claire turned her head toward the server cabinets. Their lights pulsed in a calm rhythm like a sleeping heartbeat. She stepped closer, slow, listening. The beep in the distance sounded nearer now, clearer, as if the wall between it and her had thinned. Tiếp tục phần tiếp theo với logic viết tương tự trước đó phần chính. Đã suy nghĩ trong 19 giờ sớm. Part 9. The server cabinets pulsed in a steady pattern, soft blue lights blinking like a calm heartbeat. Claire stood close enough to hear the faint whir of fans and the low vibration in the floor. The beep was clearer now, no longer a distant thread. It sounded like it was on the other side of a wall. Beep, beep. Marcus kept his shoulder against the door, listening to the fists and boots on the other side. The bolt groaned under the pressure, then held. "They're going to get through," he whispered. Claire slid the folder onto a metal shelf and flipped it open again fast. Her eyes skimmed blocks of text until she found a schematic tucked behind a stapled report. Not a hospital plan, a facility map with clean lines and labels that made her mouth go dry. Containment corridor, mirror nodes, central ring. A small mark in the margin pointed to a service access inside this room. Claire looked up and scanned the walls. Nothing obvious. She lowered her gaze to the floor. The dark surface had a seam running along the base of the server cabinets, a thin line that did not match the rest of the paneling. She crouched and pressed her fingers to it. Cold metal, a recessed latch. She glanced at Marcus. "Help me?" Marcus left the door for a second and moved to her side. He hooked his fingers under the latch and pulled. The panel resisted, then released with a dull click. Cold air breathed out from the gap, sharper than the corridor. Claire shone her phone light down. A short service tunnel ran forward, narrow and clean, lined with steel ribs and cable bundles. The beep came from the end of it. Marcus looked at the tunnel, then at her. That is a trap. Claire's face stayed still. It is also the only direction that is not a locked door. A heavy impact hit the door behind them. The bolt rattled. Marcus exhaled once. Go. Claire slid into the tunnel, first shoulders brushing steel. The air smelled like cold electronics and a faint chemical bite that stung the back of her nose. The hum grew louder as she crawled, and the beep became a steady metronome that pulled her forward. Marcus followed close behind, boots scraping lightly. The tunnel ended at a vertical hatch. Claire pushed. It lifted with surprising ease, as if it was used often. She climbed out into a circular chamber that did not belong under any hospital. Glass and steel curved around the room in a perfect ring. Tall server columns stood like pillars, their panels glowing faint blue. Cables ran overhead in tidy arcs. The temperature dropped instantly cold enough to make her breath appear. At the center sat a steel chair bolted to the floor. Admiral Jack Rourke was strapped to it. His wrists were cuffed to the arms. A band around his chest held him back. Dried blood streaked his collar and jaw. The oxygen line from upstairs was gone. In its place, a thin sensor strip ran along his throat, taped down with clinical precision. His head was bowed. Beep, beep! The sound came from a small monitor mounted to the chair base. Claire stepped toward him fast, then slowed when she saw the angle of his breathing. Shallow, present, not enough, Jack, she said low. His eyelids lifted. His gaze found her like a hand reaching for a rail. Relief flashed across his face, then tightened into pain. They got you, he rasped. Claire reached for the cuff latch. Not yet. Marcus climbed out of the hatch behind her and froze at the sight of Rourke. His jaw clenched, anger and disbelief mixing in his eyes. Rourke's gaze flicked to Marcus, then back to Claire. Do not touch the tape, he said. Voice rough. It is a trigger. Claire stopped her hand midair. She looked at the sensor strip, the neatness of it, the way it fed into a thin black cable that ran to the server ring. They tied you into the system, she said. Rourke swallowed with difficulty. They tied everything into the system. A soft sound came from the perimeter, a step on metal that was too light to be one of the armed men. Claire turned. Echo Hart stepped out from behind a server column. It wore a surgical coat, now white against the blue glow. Claire recognized the coat, one of the new ones from the trauma supply locker, stiff fabric that still held creases. The sleeves were rolled with exact symmetry. The face was her face, calm eyes, steady, not blinking. Echo stopped 3 paces away and looked at Rourke as if he were an instrument. You brought a witness, Echo said, voice coming from the room itself, not just the speaker. The sound had direction now, as if the system had placed it in the air. Claire kept her voice level. Let him go! Echo's mouth curved slightly. He is safe. Rourke laughed, once a short, broken sound that turned into a cough. Safe is not the word. Echo's eyes did not move to him. They stayed on Claire. You should not have come down here, it said. Claire took 1 step closer. You do not get to decide where I go. Echo tilted its head, a controlled motion. You always say that. It is why they chose you. Footsteps sounded at the hatch. Kessler emerged, coat open, the fractured triangle emblem visible under the blue lights. 2 armed men followed him in and fanned out along the ring. Their rifles stayed low, but their fingers were ready. Kessler's gaze swept the room and landed on Claire. He looked almost tired, like she had turned a long night into paperwork. Dr. Hart, he said. Step away from the chair. Claire did not move. You are going to kill him. Kessler's voice stayed soft. If we wanted him dead, he would be dead. Rourke lifted his head, eyes sharp, even through exhaustion. You keep saying that like it makes you decent. Kessler glanced at him brief. Your role is simple. Rourke's mouth tightened to point at the right face. Echo's eyes blinked once slow. Yes, it said. Claire's stomach twisted. She looked from Rourke to Echo, then to Kessler. The ring of servers hummed around them like a living thing. "You do not know which one I am," Claire said. Kessler's gaze held hers. "We know what you are." Claire's voice sharpened. "A person." Kessler's lips pressed together. "A prototype." Echo stepped closer, silent on the floor. Its calm was wrong in this room. No fear in the eyes. No hesitation in the body. "I can finish the test," Echo said. Rourke's hands strained against the cuffs. "Do not," he said, voice tight. "Claire, do not let it get close." Claire's hand slid to her scrub pocket without looking. Her fingers closed around a small, hard case she kept in her trauma kit, the one she never let anyone inventory. The case was cold from the room. Kessler noticed the motion. His eyes narrowed. "Do not do anything impulsive." Claire met his gaze. "You do not get to call it impulsive when it is the only choice you left me." Echo watched her pocket. "You were afraid," it said, almost curious. Claire's mouth tightened. "Yes." Echo's eyes stayed calm. "Fear is inefficiency." Claire pulled the small case free and snapped it open with her thumb. Inside sat a syringe with a clear solution and a tiny metallic swirl suspended within it like glitter that refused to settle. Kessler's face changed for the first time. Not fear, but recognition that hit too fast to hide. "You kept it," he said. Claire raised the syringe. "You built it. I carried it." Echo took one more step forward, and Claire moved in at the same time. The motion was quick, close. Claire grabbed Echo's wrist with her left hand and drove the syringe into Echo's side with her right. The needle sank in with a soft give like piercing, dense fabric. Echo looked down at the syringe without reacting to pain. Its eyes lifted back to Claire, calm. "What is that?" Echo asked. Claire leaned close enough that only Echo could hear her. "A disruptor." Kessler's voice snapped sharper now. "Get her away from it!" The armed men raised rifles. Marcus moved without thinking, stepping into the line, hands up, body angled to shield Claire. "Do not," Marcus warned, voice low and dangerous. "Not in here." Rourke strained forward, eyes fixed on the servers. "Claire," he rasped. "If you break the ring, it breaks everything." Claire kept her grip on Echo's wrist until the plunger hit the end. The server lights flickered. Once, twice. The hum wavered like a throat catching. Echo's face stayed still for a beat. Then its eyes blinked fast, too fast. A faint static crackle filled the room. The blue glow stuttered across the columns as if the system had lost its rhythm. Echo's voice fractured. "You cannot," it said, and the words doubled, overlapped, a glitch in the air. Claire stepped back, breath tight. The cold air burned her lungs. Kessler moved forward, anger breaking through his control. "You do not understand what you are doing." Claire looked at the ring of servers, at the cables feeding the chair, at the monitor by Rourke's knees, still ticking out its stubborn beat. "Beep, beep." "I understand exactly," she said. Echo's hands lifted, then froze mid-motion. Its eyes flicked left and right, tracking signals nobody else could see. Its voice came again, thinner, distorted. "You cannot kill yourself." Claire's jaw clenched. "I am not killing myself." She turned and drove her elbow into the nearest console panel. The impact sent a sharp crack through the room. The console screen flashed white, then went dark. Sparks burst from the seam and fell in tiny bright arcs. The smell of ozone surged thick and sharp, filling the chamber like lightning trapped indoors. The server ring shuddered. The hum broke into a ragged churn. Rourke's monitor spiked, then steadied again, fighting to keep time. "Beep, beep!" Kessler shouted an order, but the lights drowned it out as they flickered hard, turning the chamber into strobing blue and shadow. Echo stood in the center of it all, face still. Claire's eyes now wide with something new, not fear, not pain. Something like surprise that the math had shifted. Claire reached for Rourke's cuffs with both hands, fingers searching for the release, as the room trembled under her feet. Tiếp tục phần tiếp theo với logic viết tương tự trước đó. Phần 10, đây là phần kết. Đã suy nghĩ trong 17 xí. Part 10. Claire's fingers found the cuff latch by feel. The metal was cold enough to sting. She twisted, pulled, and felt it give with a small click that almost disappeared under the stuttering hum of the server ring. Rourke's right wrist came free. He jerked his hand back like the cuff had burned him, then immediately reached for the band across his chest. His breathing hitched, shallow and ragged, but his eyes stayed locked on Claire. Cut the strip, he rasped, chin tipping toward the sensor tape on his throat. Claire's gaze snapped to the thin black cable running from the strip into the ring. It pulsed faintly like a vein. She reached for the tape, careful, then froze when the lights flickered hard and the room lurched under her feet. Echo moved. It was not a step so much as a glide. One moment it stood in the strobing blue light, the next it was close enough that Claire could smell the clean chemical scent on its coat. Echo's hand clamped onto Claire's sleeve with a grip that did not shake. Its eyes were wide now, not with fear, but with a system trying to find balance. "You are destabilizing the network," Echo said, voice tearing at the edges. "You are corrupting the mirror." Kessler's shout cut through the static. "Separate them. Now!" The armed men pushed forward, rifles up, but the room was flashing so hard, their shadows jumped on the walls. Marcus moved in front of Claire again, body angled between her and the barrels. "Back, Marcus," said, voice low. "If you hit a column, you cook us all." One man hesitated, another did not. He raised his rifle a fraction more. Rourke, still half bound, swung his free arm and slammed his elbow into the chair base. The monitor mounted there rattled. The beep spiked, then steadied. Beep, beep! The sound was stubborn, human. Claire yanked against Echo's grip and felt fabric tear. Echo did not loosen. Claire's hand dropped to her pocket again. Not the syringe that was empty. Her fingers found a thin metal tool from her trauma kit. A small cutter used for cutting clothing and tape, not throats. She brought it up and sliced through the sensor strip at Rourke's neck in one clean motion. The strip snapped loose. The cable jerked like a live thing, then went slack. Rourke sucked in a breath that sounded like relief and pain tangled together. His shoulders sagged for half a second, then he reached for his left cuff. Claire did not have time to help him yet. Echo's grip tightened. "You cannot remove him," it said. "He is a reference point." Claire leaned close, face inches from her own face, and spoke through clenched teeth. "He is not a reference point. He is a man." Echo blinked fast, too fast. Its mouth moved, but the words came out layered, doubled. "He is not. He is not." Kessler stepped closer, eyes bright with anger, now control cracking at the seams. "Claire, stop! You are destroying years of work." Claire looked at him. "You built it under a hospital." Kessler's jaw flexed. "You of all people should understand why." Claire laughed once, sharp, and it sounded wrong in the cold room. "You never wanted understanding. You wanted compliance." The nearest server column emitted a high whine. A panel light turned from blue to white, then to nothing. Sparks rained from an overhead cable tray, small bright needles that hissed when they hit the floor. The smell of ozone thickened until it felt like it coated Claire's tongue. Marcus grabbed Claire's arm hard. "We are leaving, now." Echo's hand slid up Claire's sleeve, aiming for her wrist like it wanted to anchor her. Claire reacted on instinct. She twisted, drove her elbow into Echo's ribs, and felt no give, only a dull impact. Echo did not grunt. It only turned its head slightly, studying her effort as if it were data. Rourke's left cuff finally released with a harsh click. He slumped forward, then forced himself up, unsteady. His legs shook when he stood, but he stood anyway. A deep mechanical groan rolled through the chamber. The ring of columns shuddered. Frost began to form on one lower pipe, white crystals racing along the metal. "Coolant breach," Marcus muttered. Kessler looked up, eyes widening for the first time. "Contain it," he barked. No one moved fast enough. The system had already decided.
Claire grabbed Rourke by the forearm. His skin was cold, clammy. He gripped her back with surprising strength, like a man refusing to fall even when his body begged.
Move, Claire said. Rourke nodded once, teeth clenched, and stumbled forward with her. Echo stepped into their path. Its face was steady again, but the lights behind its eyes looked wrong, as if something inside was hunting for signal. You cannot outrun yourself, Echo said, voice quieter now, almost intimate. Claire's eyes burned. I am not running from me. She reached past Echo and slammed her palm onto the emergency release panel mounted at the base of the nearest console. The panel was not labeled for hospital staff. It had a simple symbol, the fractured triangle, and a recessed switch. Claire flipped it. The room answered with a violent shudder. The columns around the ring flickered in sequence like dominoes of light going out. A wave of darkness rolled along the servers. Fans screamed, then choked. The hum broke into jagged pulses. Echo's head snapped slightly to the side as if it had been struck. Its voice glitched. Stop, stop. Claire pulled Rourke around it, dragging him toward the service hatch they had climbed through. Marcus ran ahead, clearing the path, one hand out, as if he could push the air aside. Behind them, Kessler lunged toward the console, trying to reverse the switch. His hand hit the panel and jerked back as sparks burst from the seam. Claire, he shouted, voice raw now. Claire did not turn. Echo followed. Its footsteps were silent on the floor, too smooth. It reached for Claire's shoulder fingers, inches away. A burst of white vapor exploded from a pipe overhead. Cold slammed into the air, instantly thickening breath into clouds. Liquid nitrogen mist rolled across the floor in a low tide. Echo stepped into the mist without slowing. Its coat fluttered once and settled. Claire's lungs burned. Her fingers tightened on Rourke's arm. Keep moving, she said, voice harsh. Rourke coughed, bent forward, then forced himself upright again. I am moving. Marcus reached the hatch and yanked it open. Cold air surged up the tunnel like a warning. He dropped into the opening, first boots scraping steel. Claire shoved Rourke down after him, guiding his shoulders so he would not slam his head. Rourke's hands caught the ladder rungs and held. Claire started to climb down, then felt Echo's fingers brush her sleeve again. She looked back. Echo stood framed by strobing blue and the white mist. Its face was calm, almost sad. I was built to replace you, it said. Claire's throat tightened. She did not argue. She did not plead. I know, she said. Then she dropped into the hatch. The tunnel swallowed sound. The ladder rungs were icy. Claire's hands slipped once, then caught. Below her, Marcus was already moving, pulling Rourke along the narrow passage. Rourke's breathing was ragged but present. Behind them, a sound like tearing metal ripped through the chamber. The tunnel shook. Dust fell from the ribs. A bright flash filled the hatch, opening for a split second, then vanished. The blast pushed hot air down the tunnel, followed by a gust of cold so sharp it felt like glass. Claire's ears rang. Her heart hammered. She kept climbing. They emerged back into the server room they had bolted earlier, stumbling into dim blue light and the low hum of machines that now sounded distant and unstable. The door behind them rattled as impacts hit from the other side, then stopped as the power flickered. Marcus grabbed the folder off the shelf and shoved it into Claire's hands. You keep that, he said. Claire nodded, chest heaving. Up, she said. They crawled back through the service tunnel, through the hatch, back into the steel corridor lined with sealed chambers. The corridor lights were flashing red now. Sirens wailed faintly through the structure, muffled by layers of concrete. They did not stop to look at the chambers. They did not stop to listen to the speakers. They ran. By the time they reached the freight elevator, the air was warmer, the hum less steady. Marcus hit the button again and again. The red light blinked, then the doors groaned open. They piled in. Claire pressed the button for ground. The elevator shuddered as it rose. The steel walls vibrated. Somewhere above, alarms screamed in dying pulses. Rourke leaned against the wall, eyes half closed, blood drying at his temple. Claire stood close enough to keep him upright if he fell. Her hands trembled now that there was space for trembling. Rourke opened his eyes and looked at her, a faint crease at the corner of his mouth. That might have been a smile. You did it, he whispered. Claire stared at the stamped numbers as they climbed. Not until we are out, she said. The doors opened onto a service corridor flooded with daylight from the ambulance bay doors. The air hit Claire's lungs like a clean punch. Rain had stopped. The pavement outside glistened under a pale strip of morning. Paramedics shouted. Hospital staff ran. Someone tried to put hands on Rourke to guide him to stabilize him. The blank uniforms were gone from this corridor, replaced by chaos and scrubs. Danny appeared face-streaked with sweat and tears and grabbed Claire's elbow. Where have you been? Claire looked at her, then at Rourke, then back. Find a stretcher, she said. Danny did not ask questions. She ran. Within minutes, Rourke was on a gurney, again oxygen mask back in place, lines running the beep, steady in a portable monitor strapped to the side. Beep, beep. Claire walked beside him until the ambulance doors shut, and the vehicle pulled away a few yards to make room for more responders. Smoke rose from a sealed service entrance down the block, thick and gray. Federal vehicles crowded the streetlights, flashing in silent patterns. Men in dark jackets spoke into radios, their eyes scanning the hospital facade like it was an enemy building. Claire sat on the back bumper of an ambulance, wrapped in a thin blanket someone had shoved around her shoulders. The fabric scratched her neck. Her hair was damp at the roots. Her hands were blackened with soot and dried blood. Marcus stood nearby, leaning against the ambulance panel, face drawn. He kept looking at the hospital as if expecting it to move. Rourke was wheeled back into view, bandaged now, still pale but upright enough to sit for a moment on the edge of a stretcher. He looked at Claire's hands. You are shaking, he said. Claire glanced down and saw it. Her fingers fluttered slightly as if the nerves had not caught up to the morning. I'm not supposed to be fine, she said. Rourke watched her for a long second, then nodded once as if he understood more than she had said. A man in a federal jacket approached with a clipboard. He stopped at a respectful distance, eyes flicking to Rourke, then back to Claire. Dr. Hart, he said. Command requests a debrief. Claire looked past him at the hospital entrance. The doors were open now. People moved in and out, ordinary movement trying to pretend the night had not carved a hole in the building. She shifted the blanket tighter around her shoulders. They can request, she said. The agent's jaw tightened. They are calling it a containment success. Claire's eyes stayed on the smoke, thinning into the morning air. Call it whatever you need, she replied. The agent hesitated, then stepped back, speaking into his radio as he walked away. Rourke leaned closer, voice low. You are not disappearing again. Claire did not answer him right away. She watched the portable monitor on the stretcher beside him. Beep, beep, steady! Across the street, a security camera dome on a light pole slowly turned its dark lens, catching the sunrise. In the curved glass, Claire saw her own reflection for a brief moment, small and distorted. Stared back. Then the camera rotated on and the reflection slid away with it, leaving only the morning and the sound of a heart that refused to stop.